Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Vosteed Dachshund. A very interesting crossbar lock design from Vosteed with an M390 blade and titanium frame. This knife is available right now in a couple of different configurations. I'll link it down in the description so that you guys can check it out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to Vosteed for sending it in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement here. Overall length of the Dachshund coming in at 7.75 inches. Blade length coming in at, it's 3 1/4. Blade length about 3 1/16. Odd measurement there for cutting edge, but okay. How about some size comparisons? Up against a few models that you might be familiar with. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, a little longer than the 8020.5. Cutting edge, honestly, is... yeah, that's about where I thought it would be. It's kind of right in between. It's just got a slimmer profile, obviously, than the 8010. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, kind of in between. Cutting edge approaches the PM2. Not quite, though. Definitely longer than the Spyderco Para 3. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. Honestly, kind of a similar profile to the Hogue Deca, kind of. It's just a different, I mean, it's a heavier, more robust feeling knife for sure, but not quite as big as the Ritter Hogue. How is the action on that crossbar lock? It's pretty good. Honestly, it feels great. We have thumb stud deployment, which works really well. The crossbar lock does not feel super goofy. I mean, I can move it a little bit. Truthfully though, the knife comes, at least this one, shipped with some extra Omega springs, and these feel robust. So I think these are higher tension Omega springs. If you don't like the standard Omega springs it comes with, you can take this apart and swap out the Omega springs. If you've never done it before, it can be a little bit finicky, a little bit tricky, but it's absolutely doable. I've done it before, right? Just be careful. Make sure that you watch out for the blade when you're holding things in place. If you've taken something like this apart, then you know. But yeah, you can absolutely do that. Honestly, in the stock configuration, I think it's fine. There's a little front flipper here, and it works. I'm not sure, maybe I just don't remember handling a lot of crossbar locks with front flippers, but it works. So okay, it runs on bearings, and the action is honestly very good. I'll give you guys a demonstration here. How is the lockup on it? It survives the triple tap, which is now my standard here on this channel. After having carried this knife for a bit, I had somebody point out to me that it's probably a better idea to test the lock strength after it's been deployed a few times and not immediately after unboxing it. The more I think about that, the more it makes sense. Obviously, locks wear in, they harden up, so that's probably fair. This one has never had an issue, so I think that's just fine. But the action is very, very good. The thumb studs, I think, are in a good place. They are pretty comfortable. It's very easy to deploy. It deploys the way that you would expect it to. Let's do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's about the same. Not much difference there. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. We're looking at a knife that really is not a cumbersome profile in general, despite having heavier materials than something like G10 or injection mold plastic, micarta, etc. Really a pretty easy carry experience. The length is slightly longer in the Para 3, definitely shorter on the PM2, and nowhere near as tall as either. Materials, we are looking at titanium, and we're looking at an M390 blade. We're also looking at a titanium pocket clip. And then on the inside, obviously, you're going to have a little bit of, I think we can see it in there, the cartridge housing for the pivot area and, of course, the crossbar lock. The weight on this guy. Do we have any internal milling? Yeah, we actually do have a little bit of internal milling in there. I don't know if you can see it. If you didn't see it, just take my word for it. It's there. The weight on this guy surprisingly comes in at 3.5 ounces. I honestly thought it would be closer to 4. The balance on the knife, I haven't actually done this yet. It's a little bit back from the pivot, not much, honest. Actually, you know what? No, it's right where it should be. That actually feels really good. The knife never felt heavy. I think just maybe the scales make it feel dense. And it honestly feels like a more full-size knife than it actually is, despite, not really feeling ultra dense or heavy. I don't know how to explain that, right? It's just some knives feel larger without feeling heavier, but then I'm still surprised by the weight sometimes. I don't do these specs until after I've carried them, if you've ever wondered. And the reason is because I don't want to form opinions based on numbers. I want to form opinions based on my actual experience carrying it, right? And then we can compare and contrast when we do it the actual way. Okay. Shut up! Move on with the review. Okay, so let's do a hardware check. We'll get on my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel or the pinned comment. Let's go ahead and see what we've got here for the pivot. The pivot is a T8, and that's cool. We have T6 for the cartridge screw and the body screw. But here's something cool. I do like how they've done this. Normally, I get fussy with, the cartridge lock screws, like on the Benchmade bug out, cartridge liner screws. Here we have a stupid thing, which is a screw that goes into the stop pin, like why? Don't do that. We have a screw that goes into the cartridge liner. Then we have two screws holding in two separate backspacers, standoffs. So we have 4 body screws on each side, which is just silly. That's silly goose town. We don't need that. Here we actually have a pocket clip screw that goes into the standoff, right? Now that's just one standoff, but we have a lanyard bar back here, which is pinned or floating. So this provides the integrity, all the more integrity you would need, without adding additional hardware. That's kind of smart. I like that. We don't have a screw for the stop pin here because, as you can see, it doesn't need it. It's the same type of deal back here. So they've managed to give different parts of this knife multiple roles instead of adding unnecessary hardware, and I think that's worth pointing out, right? Now, a lot of people still don't like the look of a screw in the middle of the frame. Well, okay. But we still have minimal hardware. We have some T6 hardware, which is kind of a bummer, but yeah, that's not a deal breaker for me. I'm kind of impressed with the way that they've put this together. As far as removing the fasteners, that'll be easy and it won't be frustrating. The only frustrating part will be for people who are not super familiar with crossbar locks and Omega springs, trying to take the thing apart and then put it back together. The first time you do it, it's always a little bit frustrating, but it does get easier, right? As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here, and then I will move on into the meat and potatoes, as we say on this channel. Battery is just holding on. We're holding on there. I don't know what my deal is with maxing out battery life. I don't know. I don't want to waste any batteries. 117 thousandths by my measurements, probably 115. Not super thick. That's about what I like to see. Okay, meat and potatoes time. This has I'm going to call this a Warncliffe, right? You can call it whatever you want. It has a Warncliffe style blade, and this is the type of blade that I really enjoy using for general EDC. You guys know that I am not a self-proclaimed professional of anything. I am despite the way that apparently this channel presents itself to some people, if you don't know what would I call myself? I would call myself a regular guy, absolutely no different than the vast majority of people who watch my content. The only difference is that I handle a ridiculous number of pocket knives. So I get really picky about designs. That's it. I like to take knives out and use them for normal things as these tasks present themselves naturally. So, cutting open plastic here and there. We got some cardboard. We got some just little things like that, right? As long as the thing locks up and feels safe, feels comfortable to deploy, and doesn't have any massive hangups, that's the kind of stuff that I look for. So the blade is a profile that's certainly been done, but it does make general, regular guy tasks like me, like the ones that I do. It makes them very easy, right? And the edge is relatively thin. There's subtle curvature to it. It's not straight. So truthfully, touching this up and sharpening it, I don't know about you guys. I don't like sharpening a straight edge. I think they look cool, but a little bit of curvature is nice. It also helps, I guess, a little bit. I like to tell myself I can tell when I'm slicing things, but yeah, it works fine. And the satin finish on it looks good. I think Vosteed does a pretty good satin finish as far as satin finishes go. I'm trying to wipe it off here so you guys can look. Yeah, they do a good job. I always like a good tumbled finish, which I know they can do as well, but this is fine. We have a nice swedge up here that actually continues on down to what I call the nose of the blade. There's a nice tip here. Really straightforward utilitarian blade shape. They've done a good job of keeping pretty much everything off of it. They put Vosteed over here. They put M390 over here, right? Now this one did not seem, moving on to blade performance, right? This didn't like, I can always tell when a blade is way too soft. I had a sample here one time where it was M390, but the heat treat must have been so bad. I mean, it took a couple of passes through cardboard and it was dull. Now, this has not had any type of serious workout, but that's the exponential effect when it comes to heat treatment on a blade. The difference between a 57 Rockwell M390 blade and a 58 Rockwell blade, well, neither of them, like when we're talking about M390, neither of those numbers are good by my standards. There's an exponential difference between the 58 and the 57, and there's an exponential difference between the 58 and the 59, so on and so forth, right? So it's not like a static increase. What I'm saying is that I can, even somebody like me who doesn't like do extensive testing, you can tell. If you have an M390 blade and you take a few passes, I'm talking like 10 to 20 passes through cardboard, and the thing is too soft, yeah, it's not going to hold that edge. Now, this didn't get much of a workout, but it's still slicing just fine, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because, and I want to bring this up in the middle of the review, the range on this knife, what they list the Rockwell hardness at is huge. 58 to 62. Listen, I know that Rockwell hardness is a big, a lot of it is preference, but there's a huge chunk of the community who's very familiar with this stuff. A lot of the people in the community are people who have proper testing equipment, are people who take these things out and run them through, I guess a gauntlet of different tasks. And this has culminated into essentially the vast majority of people who are paying attention to it prefer things to hit when we're talking about M390. I understand geometry plays a massive role, arguably the biggest role in blade performance, and that's absolutely true. The vast majority of people seem to kind of come together and say, you got to be at least hitting the industry standard of 59 to 61. So I don't know what this is at. It's possible that this is, could it perform this way that I just demonstrated at 59? Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I don't know that there'd be a whole lot of difference even at 58. I think I'd notice it at 57. So I don't think we're there. But it could be as hard as 62. A lot of people who say, we talk about the optimal hardness for M390 when we're isolating that and not considering geometry. A lot of people will say it's supposed to be 60 to 62, which is, in my experience, that's kind of where I like to see it. Again, not a lot of weight in that. I'll admit that. You talk to more people and they say, I want to see M390 61 to 63. So most people like to see it at least. The industry standard seems to be 59 to 61. Vosteed, in my opinion, 58 is an unacceptable number. Again, I am not a metallurgist. I am no authority when it comes to this stuff. Different companies have their own reasons, but the bottom of your range should not be 58. It should be 59. Nothing lower than 59. It just shouldn't be that way. That's just my opinion, right? It's hard to look at. It just seems like such a dice roll. There's such a massive, a lot of people say, what's the big deal? It's just like four numbers. Again, there's a huge difference. Some people could technically be getting these at 58 and some people getting them at 62. The ones that are at 62 will cut way longer. Of course, the trade-off is toughness. People bring that up. Well, the 58 is going to be tougher. Yeah. Do you want that in M390? A composition that is not designed to be tough? No. No. We want in my opinion, with a composition like M390, which is designed to accentuate edge retention with, of course, considering appropriate geometry, which I think this is a geometry that properly, or at least does a decent job of accentuating the potential benefits of M390, to throw a whole bunch of syllables in there to make myself look or sound super intelligent. Yeah. In fact, so many syllables that I lost my train of thought. I think this is the right blade profile, or one of the correct blade profiles to accentuate the performance of M390. And I think that a higher Rockwell hardness in this appropriate range is better. Now, if they had hit this like 60 to 62, perfect. 59 to 61, okay. 58 to 62, that's a weird range. It's a dice roll. It's a dice roll, right? That's just, you guys gotta be aware of that before you pick this up, because this is not a cheap knife, right? Anyways, ergonomics. You got a 2-finger lock-in right here. If your hands are about the same as mine, I wear an XL glove. Always like to poke fun at my fellow Home Depot dads. Like, better pick up the old XL gloves. These big old meaty paws. You got normal hands, bro. Normal hands. That's pretty normal, right? Not really that big. For you gents who truly have monster hands and you have to wear a 2XL or larger glove, you might not fit in here. But if we're talking those of you who wear medium, large, or XL gloves, you're going to fit just fine in here, and it's reasonably comfortable. It's kind of angly, right? We got some nice chamfered edges here, and honestly, I think the chamfering on the, I'm really glad that they didn't just do another flat titanium frame. They didn't do anything overly spectacular here, but these bevels are large enough and they line up with these curves, and there's extra bevels in here. It kind of looks a little bit designy, it's got a little more personality than just a flat scale, and believe we got enough flat scale, Warncliffe, minimalist EDC profiles out there. This is kind of cool, right? Everything looks good. Fit and finish is good. I have no issues with any of that. But ergonomics are all right. The pocket clip is flat, rounded off, which is something that so many companies miss. Really nice. Slight sort of taper. It's thinner back here than it is out here, but we got a nice little ramp. It's just fine. Good retention there. In and out of the pocket was good. It also doesn't quite come up to the 50% line for the overall handle length, which is a little, I'm a stickler about that. I like to stickle. Yeah, it's good. It's okay. It's good enough. There's nothing hand melting here, but you have a decent amount of space between what I guess we can call a choke up position and the edge of the blade. So not, in my opinion, anything you should worry about in terms of accidentally slipping up on the blade, though this line is in line with the edge. So, you know, if you're wearing gloves, sometimes you might not notice if you're all the way up there, right? It might be cutting into your glove. The thumb stud is just ever so slightly in the cutting path. Not bad. It didn't get hung up, you know, in my my experience, so I thought that was fine. There's a black version of this, so if you don't like the you know, the titanium one, then, or just like the raw titanium look, then you can go with the black one. But check the Rockwell hardness. Usually, if it's an actual coating, it brings the range down at 1 point from the minimum and maximum end of the parameters, which would be even worse. 59 M390 is, I'm not really super enthusiastic about it. 58 is unacceptable. 57 is, why are you even making a knife out of it? Like, what are you doing? Don't do that. That's ridiculous, right? So that's my amateur expertise on that. We have a filler tab right here, which is great because this is an ambidextrous locking system. So we should have a position for the pocket clip on the other side. And I think they did a good job with that. It's nested. It only needs one screw. It's not going to move around. That's fine. We have, like I said, a lanyard bar back here. I think this, again, is a smart way to do that. So that's cool. Because you don't have to look at a big dumb hole. We don't need holes, right? We just don't need them. Lanyard people can have this. It's just fine. Honestly, it's probably easier to use. We have a sort of a medium depth carry position for the pocket clip. That's fine. In and out of the pocket. Good experience there. No issues. We have a stop pin located in its traditional spot. And we've got lots of shouldering. Absolutely no movement up, down, left, or right. I mean, I can't wrench this in any direction. No lock stick. No pivot lash. Nice and smooth and consistent in here. And honestly, I mean, it's enough. The detents on these axis, well, crossbar lock knives, whatever Vosteed calls theirs, it's always a little mushy. It never feels perfect, but you're gaining benefits with this style of lock, right? Not just left-handed people can use it, but it's honestly, you know, everybody knows this. They're easy to use. They are a little bit stronger than your liner locks and even some frame locks, right? One of the better locking systems on the market. And for people who do use their knives in an ambidextrous fashion, it's really nice to be able to manipulate the knife the same way and not feel, you know, like you're in a foreign position with the knife, you know. Honestly, this is a pretty good knife. The price, which I believe comes in at about $250, $225. I might be off just a little bit there. It's okay. Vosteed is one of those companies where when they make a titanium knife with M390, I'd like to see. I mean, it's cool, but there's not a lot extra going on. Vosteed's direct competition with companies that are the same popularity and size are making essentially the same stuff for under $200 or $199, and they're getting their numbers a little higher, right? A little bit. Some companies not, but Vosteed, you will be met with. I mean, we can argue about this all day. Vosteed's actually a pretty cool company. Like whenever I talk with them, they're super nice, right? They don't ever like, well, you know. But if you continue to run M390 as low as 58, you will be met with constant. Listen, in the history of the knife world, as far as Rockwell hardness goes, it has always been a point of concern. And M390 has been center stage of that drama for a long time. As far as this has progressed, people have not gotten more accepting to lower numbers for M390. It has only gotten worse. So there is no future where people go, you know what? I'll take 58. That's fine. It's just not going to happen. You're going to be met with this, right? From the people buying the knives, from the reviewers like me, from anybody. This is what's going to happen. So my advice would be make sure that you're not hitting it below 59. But man, if you can go higher just a little bit, people love to see 60, 61. That makes people happy, right? Get that. And then when they use the knife, the performance will be noticeable. There is absolutely a noticeable difference. There's no shortage of people going, well, the average person's not really gonna blah, blah, blah. Listen, the people buying this and taking it out and using it over 6 months, I can promise you will notice a difference. Don't give me that hoopla. Don't give me that hoopla. I'll argue with it. You go down in the comment section, I will argue with you tooth and nail. I promise. I've been doing it for 6 years. I'll do it. They'll notice. They'll notice, right? As this knife sits, I think it's slightly high. Now, listen, if you were hitting those Rockwell numbers higher, then maybe, but right? But this knife is okay. The design is cool. It works. I think it's a dependable knife. If you get one that's 58, you're going to be sharpening it a lot, especially if you're using it a lot, because 58 M390 that's hardly M390, right? There's budget steels that'll do better than that. That'll hold an edge better than that, for sure. So, like literally D2, for people who poop all over D2. Imagine, listen, somebody walking around with a D2 blade that they paid $65 for, and that thing's at 61 or 62 HRC. I promise you, if we're just isolating it to edge retention, it will shame a 58 M390 blade. It will shame it. I'm not guessing. That's the truth, right? So if you value edge retention, which, coming from somebody who does not put edge retention over everything else, I want proper balance. I want different compositions to be optimally heat treated, right? At least from my perspective as a non-professional, right? So this is very opinion based. I want the numbers to be correct, right? For the general parameters here. So it's cool. Not something I'm going to say you should be rushing out and buying, especially with that big of a dice roll. Just my opinion. The links will be in the description in any case, and I'll still make a commission if you decide to pick it up, right? But the point of these videos, as I've pointed out many times, is not to sell the thing. It's to give you my honest impressions and tell you the truth about what you should be cautious about, right? So you can make that decision for yourself. This is all right. I'd just like to see it better. I have faith in Vosteed. I think they're a great company and they make some excellent knives, but numbers up. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.